How's this campaign going, and is anything showing up in the polls yet?
No, nothing would show up properly in the polls as yet because it normally takes 7 to 10 days for any particular issue to really register with the polls. It's almost as if people have to go to the pub, talk to their neighbours, talk to their relatives before they start taking a different view.
Also, it's been a bank
Actually,
holiday weekend. Most people have better things to do.
precisely. And I was just about to say that actually the first week of an election campaign, although there's natural attention to it by the media, there's relatively little by the public at large. It's not been a good takeoff for the Conservatives, but it's actually not really registered with many other parties from many other parties either.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because polling always shows actually very little often changes during campaigns, and only in the last 2 weeks do a lot of people engage. But interesting, of course, we go back to 2017, and basically the Tory lead basically imploded. While
Well, I was going to say that people do presume that nothing changes during an election campaign. It actually does, and particularly because we have a first past the post system, it can influence even limited changes can influence the results quite markedly.
Yeah, now that's interesting what's going on here because we've got the Labour Party some 20 points way ahead. Doesn't seem to be shifting right now. But included in that polling analysis is the fact that actually an awful lot of people are saying don't know. And they're kind of ousted from the analysis, which can make that Labour lead look a bit higher than it really is. Is there any hope at all, realistically, that the Tories will perhaps not win the election, but maybe a hung parliament? Is that their best hope? And is that even remotely on the cards?
I think that's challenging, but you
Challenging.
use the
That was
big
a wonderful Sir Humphrey. Challenging, Prime Minister.
pot. That's even a more Sir Humphrey. But the issue is whether it's a 20% lead. I did some analysis prior to what I was expecting to be a general election, which says that the polls are overestimating the Labour lead, that you can look at detailed council by-election results, council elections in May, and there is a clear indication that there is an overstatement of the Labour lead, but the overstatement doesn't remove that Labour
No.
lead, it just reduces it.
Yeah, indeed. And in terms of the challenge from Reform UK, we've had Nigel Farage challenging the Tory leader to a TV debate on immigration. That's not going to happen. I mean, Nigel Farage isn't even standing in the election. He's not a party leader. So I doubt very much there would be any real sort of pressure for that to happen. But in terms of Reform UK actually having an impact on not winning a lot of seats themselves, if any, but the ability to split that Tory vote and let Labour win more seats. How big is that threat?
There is a threat, there's no question about it, and there will be places where if Reform gets a certain number of votes, it'll be larger than the majority of the winning Labour candidate, for example. So one could say that's a seat that Reform cost the
Mm.
Conservatives, but one has to remember that some of those voters wouldn't necessarily vote Conservative.
Or vote at
They
all?
may either sit on their hands at home or they may be disaffected, dissatisfied Lib Dems or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's too simplistic just to say that just because Reform get a certain number of votes, the
Mm.
Conservatives would lose a seat. But you're right about Nigel Farage. In general, the challenge, the decision as to what questions are asked in what debate are actually made by people like yourself rather than party leaders.
Mm.
And it's significant that he's just saying, I want to debate this one issue,
Yeah.
not the broad political issues. And as you say, he's not even a candidate for
Mm.
any
It
constituency.
rather undermines that, doesn't it? Well, look, I mean, he says it's the immigration election. We had Rachel Reeves currently. She's on stage answering questions at a press conference in Derby, where she said rather wonderfully Orwellian. In the face of Tory chaos, stability is change. I mean, George Orwell could definitely have written that in 1984. Stability is change, war is peace. Truth is lies. But they think they're saying it's the economy. That's the issue. What do you make of national service for youngsters leaving school, VAT on school fees from the Labour Party, the Tories also this triple lock plus pledge to pensioners? Are any of these game-changing policies?
I think they're not game-changing policies. People vote essentially on the basis of the economy and their perception of the economy as the prime issue. The next three issues are climate change, immigration, and the NHS. And those are important to certain groups of people. In terms of the specifics on pensions, you indicated just now that those commitments are aimed at certain people, but national service may worry some younger voters, but please some older voters. I think the one interesting point is the question of VAT on school fees. And it comes back to what that gentleman was saying earlier just now, who called in. People choose to spend their money in different ways, and many parents scrimp and save and don't go on holidays to send kids to private schools. And those people, that may well influence voters.
Yeah.
And if you've got a concentration of private schools, which you have in some places, that could be quite important
That could
in
swing an
those
election.
few constituencies.
Absolutely fascinating. Lord Hayward, thank you so much indeed. Appreciate you joining us, the Conservative peer and pollster there, and insulted elderly gentleman, as he said it.